What is the cost of not making the call? The longer we delay, the more expensive the cost. Welcome to Make the Call. I am Erica N. Parks. I am a combat Army veteran and I am an executor. Welcome to Make the Call, where execution creates opportunities that thinking along never will. Delayed decisions create costs long before anyone even notices. I call these hidden costs to delayed decisions. They look like rework, loss of momentum, team confusion. Those are just three, but they're very, very expensive. Rework. Rework is required when an assignment or tasks for assignments are not done to standard the first time. This can get very expensive because we've already spent the budget on doing it once. Now we're going back to redo the assignment. It's going to take more money and more manpower and time away from other tasks. And it's also going to delay the project as a whole because now we're stopping to go back to recorrect in order to move forward. Rework can get very expensive. Number two is my favorite, loss of momentum. This is a really big one because it can lead to low morale. And this happens when there is not clear communication or there's a communication breakdown. If we don't have a thorough communication plan in our teams, and if we don't execute it, my favorite thing, that means that team members are lost. And so they lose momentum. We're waiting sometimes for perfect conditions to make a move. And to be frank, there aren't any perfect conditions. We must execute and adjust as needed. So team members lose momentum when they do not trust leadership. Uncertainty, unclear instructions can lead to distrust because team members will start to feel like they're wasting their time and their energy because they don't think that leaders know the right move to make. And finally, number three, team confusion. Rework and loss of momentum will create team confusion. They all are entangled. Team members are confused or become confused when everything is out of sync. So now we have misalignment. When we have misalignment, that means project deadlines have all been aborted. Nothing is running as scheduled. We are moving behind the project, and guess what? It is costing us lots of money and resources. This happens when we have not enforced clear deadlines. We do not have clear instructions on what we are to do. We do not have clear ownership, and we're not giving real reports and progress on where we are. This will definitely create team confusion and send your tasks, your projects haywire. I will never forget working with this organization, and a great leader once said this: why are we admiring the problem? It's so true. Why are you admiring the problem? This is what it looks like when we're admiring the problem. We know it is broken, yet we continue operating anyway. We start to normalize dysfunction. And the classic theme, this is one that I hear often. This is the way we have always done things. Now that is admiring the problem. I remember years ago being brought in as a contractor to work with this organization on their public health process. When I came in, the process looked great on paper. Everything looked like it met to the standards. However, in real time, it was failing. I remember having to ask several questions to get to the bottom line of this project. What I discovered is that the organization chose familiarity over expertise. And that was part of the root of the problem. Do you see the correlation from what we talked about earlier, if there's not clear understanding of what we're doing, we can start moving in the wrong direction. And so I had to diagnose the breakdown in this process. My discovery led me to diagnosing the real breakdown of this process, and there were several. In situations like this, the first thing that an expert should do is assess the entire process. That means you're looking at policies, standing operating procedures, you're looking at metrics, you're interviewing stakeholders, and you're gathering all of this to make your analysis. I never recommend making decisions with your natural eye before doing a thorough assessment of what it is that is happening and how we got to where we are in this point in time. The data analysis included quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative meaning the metrics, the numbers, the true value of the process versus where the process was reported on paper. And the standards. What does the standard say a well-performing process looks like? That was the data, the quantitative data. The qualitative data looked like the information, the insight from the key stakeholder interviews. Understanding each expert role and their position in the process. Making sure I understood how the data was gathered in order to have a true understanding of why this organization was where it was. When it was time to make the recommendations, the SWOT analysis tool was used. SWOT, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths look like a charter, a signed charter, which identifies the expert responsible for the entire process. The resources for the project, which are the team members that are or should be a part. A budget allocated to cover the expenses of the project for its performance. And a cadence for meetings, a time where progress is reported. The weaknesses disclose the lack of clear guidance, which affected the entire process. It also disclosed the lack of active working groups. So there were working groups that were developed, but not producing as they could due to the lack of clear guidance. I could see, starting out just from looking at the strengths and weaknesses, why there was a lack of morale, loss of momentum, and why this process was failing in real time. However, there were opportunities. There was an opportunity to engage the community, to get their feedback to improve the process. There was also an opportunity now to take the information from the key stakeholder interviews to also advance the process. And there were threats disclosed. The threats revealed that there was a lack of an executive committee to govern the process. There was also a lack of a strategic plan, which automatically made this process out of compliance. That was helpful information to have a good understanding of why it was failing in real time in order to improve its performance. You see, expertise and data guides execution. It helps us to make the right decision. In this scenario, the next right decision was to take this information and to educate the stakeholders on what was happening and the progress of this process. It was important to take these steps to be able to Explain how the information was gathered and why the recommendations were made. This also helps to build trust. When you are transparent in showing and sharing how you came to a conclusion, you usually get team members to buy in faster. Not only does transparency create trust, but it also exemplifies great leadership skills. It shows accountability, and it also can create mutual trust. People are more open on your team to share information to you because they see that you actually care. Remember, people don't care about how much you know. They care about what they see you do and how you make them feel. Being transparent is one of the ways to show genuine care in your team members and the work that you're doing and the mission that you all are moving and operating for. Conducting a thorough assessment, sharing the full analysis, help to build the trust required to now bring the process into alignment. There is no way that could have happened without doing all of those things. Momentum was restored. The team now had a strategic plan. There was a guideline that gave them clear understanding, and that process moved from a 5.45 to a 7.45 on a 10-point scale within a year and a half. Now that's what you call correcting a process by using all the tools necessary, keeping team members engaged to prevent misalignment and the hidden costs of delayed decisions. The lesson here is leaders often believe they have a people problem. However, sometimes they have a systems problem, an ownership problem, a communication problem, or maybe they have a diagnosis problem. In closing, I ask, what problem are you admiring? And what is it costing you every day that you choose not to make the call? I am Erica N. Parks, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of Make the Call. I'll see you next week. Good night.